The future of enterprise work is no longer just about faster tools. It's about autonomous teammates. As AI agents evolve beyond generative assistance and begin executing multi-step tasks end-to-end, deeper questions emerge. What happens when work, or if work itself, becomes collaborative between humans and AI and not sequential? This vision of the agentic enterprise challenges long-held assumptions about productivity, organizational design, and what it even means to do work. This is built on a foundation of trusted data, signals a shift from AI as a helper to AI as a coworker, one capable of detecting renewals, resolving service issues, or troubleshooting IT problems autonomously. But with this potential comes an equally important layer of governance, readiness, and cultural transformation. Before we dive into these topics, this episode of a Global Tech Podcast wants to introduce these things. What makes the agentic enterprise a fundamental shift in how companies operate, not just an incremental upgrade? Are organizations really ready for autonomous AI agents? And what do they need to build or rethink before deploying them? And how does human potential itself evolve when AI agents become proactive teammates, handling repeatable, multi-step workflows? To unpack all of this and more, we are joined by Gavin Barfield, CTO and Vice President, Solution Engineering ASEAN at Salesforce. Gavin, how are you?
Michael, very well, and very good to see you again. Thank you so much for inviting me back to talk to you.
We always love to have the best people back. Let's just jump right in. And even people with great setups, that's just for you. When we talk about the rise of the agentic enterprise, what do you believe is one of the biggest misconceptions about how AI will change the way work actually gets done?
I mean, as we move to the agentic enterprise, it's really about this concept of embedding AI into everything you do. And we've seen AI often as a bolt-on to existing processes. And we've gone through this sort of co-pilot era where we've added AI as an assistant to assist in what we do. And many times it's a different application, you're cut and pasting between different places. It's something that's bolted onto your organization. And as a result, when we sort of had the co-pilot era from before, we've seen adoption not really take off as we expected. But the agentic enterprise, I think, is very, very different. I think this is not just an evolution of technology, this is a revolution. We will look back on this technology as something that completely changes the way we work. This is probably the largest technology innovation and revolution of our lifetime. And our lifetime includes things like the internet, mobile, social media, and various other stuff. Fundamentally, AI agents will change the way that we work and change the way that we live. And this is going to be, as I said, a real revolution on the way that happens. So we are really upbeat on the potential that these agents have and their transformation ability.
Talk to me a little bit about why the co-pilot era wasn't nearly as successful as we thought. And to be fair, I said era kind of ironically because it only lasted 12 months, 18 months. It wasn't around for that long, and it got completely superseded by Agentic. But why didn't co-pilot work? Was there just not enough time for it to uptake? Or did people think I don't really need somebody looking over my shoulder all the time while I'm trying to type an email?
I think there's a number of reasons. So firstly, and I think I've used before the idea of the sat nav, and I'll repeat that analogy to you. You know, I see some of these AIs, if you look at it like a sat nav, Copilot was like that. It's an assistant, something that helps you. And we all love sat navs. We're not going to go back to maps. But if the sat nav you have in your car is based on the wrong data, if you're driving around with maps that are 5 years out of date, it's not going to be of much use to you. And you're not going to trust it. When it says turn right, you'll be, I'm not sure that is accurate. Let me just check. Also, if the sat nav is in the trunk, or the boot as we call it in the UK, and you have to jump out and have a look every time you get to a junction, it's not really going to work. And that's really where I think the co-pilot era had. It was disconnected from the flow of work. You were jumping back and forward. It wasn't really there, AI embedded where you need it to be. And secondly, it wasn't built on trusted data. And the data foundation around it wasn't correct. And we all know that when we use data from large language models, those models included scraping from the internet, which can be of varying quality. Those large language models were not good at being able to produce reliable data. And that's why our solution is also grounded on that trusted data to ground the prompt and not use those LLMs. So I think it was a matter of data not being up to date and not being in the flow of work. And thirdly, not taking action. So if I take my analogy further and look at something like the Waymo, and I was in San Francisco for our Dreamforce, that is agentic, right? That uses the same foundation of the sat-nav, but it actually goes one stage further and it drives the car for you. And that's where we see a big shift, right? Because suddenly you've gone from something that helps you and just helps you do the task that you're going to do a little bit more efficiently to something that actually does the task for you. So I think that's on the technology side. Well, the second bit is from the business side. What we saw is a lot of FOMO, right? Many. I think there's a new terminology I forgot the other day, but FOMO is still, I'm still in the FOMO era. We saw many customers really excited by the technology. And what I imagine happening is, the board of directors comes there, the chairman, the CEO sees this technology. Maybe their son, daughter, nephew, grandchild shows them ChatGPT.
Grandchild, for sure.
They hear that other people are doing this. They see the stock prices of all of these AI companies coming up. They come into the office, they bring the CIO together and they say, how many agentic AI projects are we doing? And he says, boss, not too many. Go and do more. So it was a technology looking for a problem, technology looking for a use case, as opposed to the use case looking at the technology side of it. And then as a result, all these projects spurred off to try these different technologies, but without really understanding the business reason and what you're trying to achieve behind it. It was technology for technology's sake. Where we're getting to now, I think companies who are much more focused on, we're going to do this agentic stuff and we're going to go forward on it, but what are the use cases? What's the business case and what's the ROI behind it? And the days of just going through pilots and POCs and fiddling around with technology without a clear outcome, I think is coming to an end.
So when you talk to big companies, right, this is really interesting. I interrupted you when you were saying like their son, their daughter, their wife, their husband, whatever it was. And I said definitely their grandchild, because I do think there's this generational gap between senior leadership, which is closer to my age, I think, than it is to like a 35-year-old. And I think what happens is like I'm an early adopter. Like I was actually on the phone with my niece and nephew because it's Thanksgiving in the United States today, right? And I'm an early adopter. And they were like, I didn't even know I could do that with FaceTime, whatever it was. It doesn't matter. But most people are not kind of looking at it as how do I solve this problem? But I know I need to use this thing. When you talk to businesses now, and when you talk to the senior management, what are some of the things that they still misunderstand about this, but that they need to understand and that they can learn from you guys?
We've seen a shift from DIY AI to understanding that out-of-the-box functionality, and platforms like Salesforce can get you across the line quicker. And speed to market is important. This technology is shifting so quickly. It's very, very difficult for any company, to be able to keep up with the speed that this technology is coming in, let alone companies that are trying to build this stuff themselves. Even the best resource companies that can employ PhD, graduates in AI and data scientists are finding that the technology is moving far too quick for them to be able to keep up with, and to be able to sort of move into production. So we're seeing companies now coming and looking at platforms like Salesforce and our Agentforce 360 platform because it offers a quick time to market. And because we're on that innovation journey, we're updating our solution, we're bringing in new functionality very, very quickly. And Salesforce, does 3 releases a year, and now we're doing much more rapidly releases on our Agentforce and Data Cloud product. Is coming in very, very frequently. We're building this technology. So, business has been pushing IT teams to say, hey, you've been tinkering with this Gen AI for a long while. Why haven't we seen any of it? Why can't we still summarize a case by pressing a button? Why can't we, why do we still have to search through knowledge articles? And one great example of where we've used this technology is Singapore Airlines. And Singapore Airlines is utilizing this technology from Salesforce to be able to very quickly respond to customers' queries. So instead of the agent having to go through and look at all these PDFs and unstructured data to find the answer to a question, the AI is able to surface that very quickly. And this is out-of-the-box functionality that we're able to enable them on very quickly.
Yeah, so the other thing I want to know is, what has changed, right, to make this stuff to make agentic AI so available, and what needs to change inside these companies as well? In other words, are they really ready for all this stuff? So like Singapore Airlines, great example. But when you do talk to big companies, yeah, they want it, but do they know where they want to use it? Like, what are some of the other use cases? And do they feel like they have to change their mentality and their mindset internally as well to get people to understand, like, and I'll give you an example from mine after you give me yours, but like where they understand, like, people aren't going to be replaced. They're just going to be super powered potentially. Yeah.
I mean, any technology coming in has a massive, change management process behind it, and also involves rethinking and reinventing business processes and the way you do it. And that's really what we're talking about when we talk about an agentic enterprise. It's not just about the technology. It's about being able to rethink your whole organization and embed AI. And that requires you to rethink your processes, your organization model, the way that you talk to customers. Everything about your being needs to be really looked at, and to see how AI can supplement it across the journey. So it's not just about implementing an agent. But But what we're seeing, customers are now looking at how can we get quick returns and quick wins, and looking at sort of small use cases where they can start pushing out the agentic technology with a clear ROI and a clear business benefit. One great example is Maxicare. They are an insurance company that we're working with in the Philippines. And when you go to the dentist, you unfortunately the dentist says, "Oh, I'm going to have to do some work." You need a letter of authorization from your insurer in order to go and get that work done. And that process, used to take a long while, and you used to have to go back to the dentist in a few days' time and go through this. Now with an agent, that simple process of requesting the letter of authorization can be done very, very quickly. Simple use case, not too complex, but great value. And you can imagine when you're lying in the dentist chair, and someone's got a drill in your mouth, the ability to get that thing sorted rather quickly is going to be much more advantageous than having to go back, fill in forms, call contact centers. So start with those quick use cases that deliver back value and deliver customer value. And then, you build and incrementally improve on them.
So, I think one of the times that we spoke before, we talked about data and data architecture. And I just want to cover this a little bit more, particularly in the context of agentic AI. And the reason why is because if the data is not great, then the decisions that the agent's making, and even though they're autonomous, they're still going to have to be watched a little bit, right? But that's going to be really clear that data is going to have to be pristine, in my mind, right? What do companies need to think about in the context of the data that they have? Because in the old days, right, like if I'm analyzing something, and I did this all the time when I was at Morgan Stanley and Goldman Sachs, I'd see some data and just think, I know that's wrong. Do you know what I mean? And I could fix it myself, like whether it was in a spreadsheet or in some real-time application that we're using, and say, yeah, that's better, and now I can make a decision based on that. But in this case for agentic, where the decisions are getting made in real time potentially, what kind of ways do the companies need to rethink their data and their data infrastructure as well? Does that make sense?
I mean, from two angles. If we talk about structured data, most organizations still have huge amounts of data in silos across the organization. And many of them have moved into building data management platforms, but really often what that's done is just create an even bigger silo, an even bigger island of data, because often these data management solutions are not connected in. They're not connected to your AI. They're not connected to your customer service. I don't expect to see a salesperson logging into one of these data warehouses when they're in a customer's site, right? So how do you unlock and untrap that data? And many companies have invested a huge amount of time building that infrastructure, but are just not getting the value from that data that they've already cleaned and pulled together. So that's why one of the first things we built was our data cloud, which we're now calling Data 360, to at least allow you to bring that data together and get that single unified view of your customer. And data quality will improve over time. You start off, and as you trust more and more sources, you build more and you add more into this, and to create a much bigger picture of your customer. The second is on the unstructured side. And that requires some work. Companies having to spend time really looking and understanding their knowledge articles. We see many articles that conflict with each other. There is a cleaning up exercise to be able to understand where that data exists. But we recently announced at our Dreamforce a new way of looking at this, which we call intelligent context, which is basically using an LLM to try to understand not just a document, but the actual meaning of the document, the semantic meaning of the document behind. So that's what gives agents context. And where we're seeing the difference between, this is a strange concept, but intelligent artificial intelligent agents and not so intelligent artificial agents is context.
Yeah.
And, I give you an example. I'm talking here about Salesforce because I've been with the company for 5 years. So I've got in my brain all of this background and context and knowledge. Yeah. I've seen all these stuff. So I can talk about this, fluently because I have that context. If I just came in the door today and just read one article, I don't think we'd be having the same conversation. And the same is true of agents. If you have an agent that just has a narrow view of what it's able to do, it doesn't have the background and the context. But an agent that sits inside Agentforce has access to all that company data, structured and unstructured. And it's that context and background that makes an agent, more intelligent than others.
Yeah. So one of the things that I always like to say, and junior people at work used to drive me crazy. I'd be like, okay, what time are we, when are we having that meeting? And they would say, Thursday. And I'm like, okay, don't make me ask the next question. Thursday at what time? Where is it? Give me all the context. This is why I was laughing when you were saying this, because information without context, it's just drivel. It's just words, right? It doesn't mean anything. But I want to talk about this junior employee thing, right? Because I think about this a lot when I think about agentic AI. For me, at least at the beginning, I think about it like and tell me where I'm wrong, right? Because I'm not always right. But I think about it like a junior employee. You come in, you give it information, you ask it or you instruct it to do things, but you don't kind of just walk away from it and leave it alone and let it just go away on its own and do things, right? Because you don't know if it's going to do the thing you asked it to do. The same way with the junior employee, particularly when I was trading, you would sit with them when they were trading and go, no, not now. Don't do that now. And here's why. And explain to them. And at some point you got comfortable that they could do it on their own autonomously. And I use that word on purpose. How does that work with agentic AI? Do you know what I mean? That curve of now I feel super comfy.
So we had our Dreamforce conference just a month ago, and we launched really Agentforce 360, which I would describe as a year of learning, a year of really learning and understanding, how these agents work, how we need to tweak and how we need to change things. And we made a number of announcements around that. I mentioned intelligent context to get more context and more background grounding for the agent. The second one was really around putting in what we're calling hybrid reasoning. So there was an assumption at the beginning that these agents, you could pretty much let the LLM and the reasoning engine decide how to do things. But customers are coming back to us to say, hang on a minute, we have a policy and a process here, right? We will tell you how we want it to be done. If a customer X does this, then we will do that. If not, we will do that, right? We have a policies and procedures, and we don't want agents going out working this stuff out ourselves. We'll tell you how we want it to be able to do it. And we also want consistency. We want the same agent response every time we ask the same question. So we've, developed, our new agent builder to be able to be very prescriptive and deterministic over how the agent works. And this is a big shift from basically saying we give a vague instruction and let the LLM go ahead. And to your point, when a junior employee comes along, you don't just give them vague instruction and let them go loose. You give them the procedure and you say, you do this, 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 and this. So the agents have now got the ability to be creative and do the reasoning and use the LLM for certain bits, but you to actually be much more specific over how it should work, what it should do. And that's a real big shift. The third one to mention is Agentforce observability. So to your point, you don't just leave an agent and a new employee by itself. You monitor and you track them. So we've actually built now in Data Cloud a new data model that sucks in all the information on what the agents are doing. It gives you very rich dashboards and observability on exactly how that agent is performing. What's the ROI on that agent? How many calls has it handled successfully? How many times has it dropped off? What's the customer sentiment been around those conversations? And then even going down in detail to be able to look at the questions customers are asking and the response. And then we run that through an LLM to determine whether that's a good response. So a customer says, what time is your branch open? And the agent replies, we have a number of branches all ready to serve you. Well, okay, relevant, but not a good answer, right? You haven't answered the question. So that's going to get a red score. And then we're going to see that. And then people then need to go in and say, right, what's the issue here? Maybe my knowledge article needs fixing. Maybe I need to fix the instructions given to the agent. So, we're getting to that point of having right granular detail on how these agents are working and the return that these agents are going. And to your point, exactly like a new employee, you would watch them, you would listen into some of their calls, you would monitor their work, you would give feedback, you'd ask them to change their approach depending on if they're successful or not.
So in my intro I mentioned this idea of an agentic AI as like a coworker, right? We spent a little bit of time talking about a junior employee. That's fine, but if they are coworkers, can we imagine a scenario where the agentic AI doesn't go back to like an LLM per se and ask it a question? But if it's unsure, and employees are unsure about things all the time, and you already mentioned this, like you said, I've been here for 5 years, so there's a lot of sort of institutional knowledge that I've just accumulated that I don't even know that I know, but when it's necessary, I can just access it. And if I don't know something, I can ask my colleague, my boss, or one of my juniors if something's changed. Is there a scenario where that agentic AI can also say like, I don't know what to do here, and ask somebody?
Yeah. Well, that's really where the agents and humans story goes. And you said at the beginning, this is not about agents replacing humans. This is about agents augmenting humans.
Yeah.
And what is important is for an agent to understand when it's come to the limits and the guardrails of where it understands. So if it doesn't know the answer or it's reached the limits of what it can do, then then it needs to escalate that and pass that seamlessly across to human. And it's the same in real life. I mean, if I called up a contact center and said, I don't know, I need a refund of $3. My expectation is that probably the customer service agent could authorize that. It's within their power. I don't think they're going to go and contact their supervisor. They would probably authorize that because that's within the guardrails set for the agent. If I ask for a refund of $20,000, I would expect it to go to a different process and for something different to happen. And the same with the agents. You want to set the guardrails. You can do this, but if you hit the limit of what you're able to do, then you need to be able to escalate that to a human and seamlessly pass it across. So it's really about having agents being defined in terms of the scope, doing what they can do, but then being able to escalate and hand over to a human effectively when they get to the end of their sphere of control.
So you just mentioned Dreamforce a bunch of times, right? And one of the things that makes your role so interesting is that it's kind of, well, it's Asia focused. You get to go home, I would say in air quotes, and talk to people internationally, like from all over the world. Like, I don't know how many people were at Dreamforce, but I'm sure it was more than like 250. And do you see different approaches from different geographical regions and different sort of cultural ways that they're looking at employing this? If you know what I mean, like asking just different questions. Like, I'm from this country, I'm from this city, so I ask this question, but I'm from this place and that place, and I ask different stuff. It must be different, no?
It does, and one of the things that we announced this year is our ability to support numerous Asian languages. So we're able to support a variety of languages across Asia, and it's not just about the supporting language in terms of just physically the words. It's being able for the models to understand, because we say things differently in different cultures and stuff. So that's an exciting innovation for us. It's also good to see how other companies globally have been implementing this and some of the use cases. So we heard from Pandora, a well-known brand, a jewelry brand, as you know. They just implemented their app, very cleverly called Gemma. As they sell gems. So that was very, someone gets top points in the marketing team. But that allows you to do these product recommendations. So you have a conversation. You say, "Is my daughter's birthday coming up? She loves horses. What can you suggest?" And then the AI agent is able to say, "Look, here is a nice horse charm for her necklace or a bracelet." And then you go ahead and you can complete that purchase. And we also heard from companies like PepsiCo. PepsiCo is a huge food and beverage retailer. Pepsi, of course, the Doritos, many other brands. They have a problem because they have a huge number of customers, and the majority of their customers, I think over 50%, are the smaller mom and pop stores. One fridge of
tiny.
Pepsi. Of Pepsi products, and then they've got the huge customers who buy the crates
Burger
of it,
King.
the big, that sort of thing. And of course, they've only got a certain number of people, and you would expect, of course, that they obviously prioritize their physical agents on the big customers, making sure they're happy, and that leaves a gap with the smaller customers who are really unable to get, the support that they need. With agents, you can scale without adding more humans. They're able to offer that great customer service. So even if you've only got one fridge, and you can get onto an agent and say, "Hey, how do I clean my fridge?" Or "I need to order another crate of Pepsi. I'm running low on this product, that product." So you're able to use that agentically. And what struck me was how agents are going to allow us to scale. And that's critical to me. It's about the ability to offer that level of customer service that as humans, and the same is true in banking. If you're a big customer, you get a relationship manager, they'll call you, you've got a number to call. If you're not, you don't. But how do you extend that same customer service to every market segment, whether you have $1 million in your bank account or $100 in your bank account? How do you manage to at least give customers that consistent experience? And that's where agents can do that. And at the moment, there's that obviously divide where companies provide a premier service and then, work it out yourself type of service. And I think the agents allow you to scale across that and offer a new range of customer service to every single market segment, whether you're big or small.
I can't believe you brought up Pandora, and I'll tell you why. I actually met the founder of Pandora 20 years ago,
Oh, wow.
And you have no way of knowing that. And I just thought it was kind of funny, actually.
Amazing brand, and global reach, and really great sort of technology story, and really looking at how a physical product can exist in the digital world as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And look, one of the reasons why I met him was because I was in Thailand and he was coming to Thailand to look at gemstones. This is what they were doing 20 years ago, right? So fair enough. When you think about not selling per se, right? Because this is trying to help companies like scale, as you said, right? And just do more work, do it better, do it more efficiently. But when you look at a company, are there specific things that already have to be in place or that need to be put in place so that they can benefit from all this agentic AI? Do you know what I mean? Like if they're missing X or Y, what do they need to do to get there? And is it like, what do these small companies have to do? As you mentioned, I wrote down SMEs, right? Because a smaller company is not going to have the same resources as a bigger company. What are the things they have to do? And then maybe what are some of the things that they underestimate as well? Like, we'll be fine without that thing.
It goes back to data. I mean, the step one is always pulling your data together, but there's a realization that this is a never-ending journey. I don't think you're ever in a situation where you say, now my data is good, now my data is clean, now everything is in order. But being able to create a data foundation, and I would go back to the point of starting off with the use cases, and that's really where we always start the conversation. It's really around what are your biggest problems and what are you trying to achieve, and how can we break that down? And what we're seeing with agents is sort of 4 phases. And the first phase, which is a lot of value, is around simple knowledge agents. So a lot of conversations that customers have with companies is purely to ask the same questions time and time again. And being able to pull up from a knowledge base will, in many cases, and I'll give an example of Salesforce in a minute, is able to really create some value, because instead of humans answering that same question, you just connect into the knowledge base. The second phase is simple agent actions. So what's my account balance? I want to top up $50 on my account, or whatever that might be. So these are simple actions. The third one is multi-stage actions. So I want to do a refund, for example, which may have 3 or 4 different steps. And then the fourth one is our agent to agent, the idea that, agents are talking to each other agents. And I'll give you some examples of where I think that's going in a while. But on the first one, Salesforce decided, we need to be customer zero. We can't go and sell this and propagate this if we're not running it and have some good case studies and stories ourselves. So we took our support organization, and we have thousands of people contacting us online to ask many questions. How do I configure this? What do I do on that one? What does this button do? How do I do that? We ingested all of our release notes, all of our solved cases and the reasons why we solved those cases. We ingested all of our product documents, our how-to, thousands of documents we ingested into our Data 360. And then we created an agent across that. And what that was done within, less than a year, we've had over 2 million conversations that have been handled by the agent. 77% of that has been handled by the agent without having to pass to a human. And that's realized us $100 million annualized savings across our support. So, just the simple being able to pull those knowledge articles in and do that is having a major effect. And as a result, we're now able to, those instead of those humans doing that work, we've now redeployed them to be working in other parts of the business, helping our customers bring this agentic technology. So there are real use cases behind it. The second one I want to mention on Salesforce as well is, like all organizations, we receive thousands of inquiries per day on our products. And we don't have enough people to be able to answer all of those. Most companies don't. They score. They do a lead scoring, and you go through and you say, right, these are the most high opportunities, and we pass them across to a human. And as a result, some queries don't get answered. And as a result of what we're doing now, we're now able to answer every single one of those queries through an agent. So every time you contact, you'll get a response, and you'll get in a conversation with an agent. And that agent will then determine, if it's then worth handing over to a human or not, depending on how that conversation is going. So if you're expressing some interest, we're answering questions, those responses are coming back at some point. And to the point earlier on in guardrails, it will say, okay, I'm reached the end of where I want to go now. I'm going to hand that over to a human so that they can complete and carry on this conversation. Or it may be a situation where the customer is not responding, the questions don't make sense, and it says, I think this is probably not a lead that we need to follow up with. And that's had a dramatic effect by really making sure that our humans, and we haven't changed the number of humans we've got, but those humans are now receiving much more well-qualified, pre-triaged, if you like, leads, as opposed to just the scoring mechanism that used to happen.
Yeah, so one of the notes that I wrote down is, does agentic AI actually really improve real customer service that humans actually give? And the example that I'll give you from my own experience is that when I was a sales trader on a portfolio trading desk, I could only do so much work if I had to slice and dice trades manually, watch the market all the time completely. But once we did automated trading, it actually allowed me to be a better sales trader, because then I could actually talk to the clients, exchange ideas with them, make it much better. But also, I could also increase the value of the stuff that I was trading from 100 million to 1 billion, and that's a real number, without doing any more work, right? I was still giving better customer service, but are we seeing that as well from this agentic AI stuff that you're implementing too? And
absolutely.
And just one more follow up there. It's like, then what ends up being the highest valued human work? if that makes sense.
I mean, what you gave is a great example, right? And that's really the narrative around agents and humans working together and providing humans with that ability to do much deeper customer related stuff, right? Really understand your customers, providing that empathy, being much more creative, doing all those things that we do as humans. 41% in a recent study shows that the work we're doing is low value task as humans. I want to change my billing address. My telephone number's changed. When is my parcel arriving? All of this stuff that humans are dealing with on a day-to-day basis that they don't need to be able to do, that agents can handle by themselves. And that frees up a massive capacity. And globally, we're suffering from a labor shortage. We're suffering from a skilled labor shortage to be able to do these things. And we're also suffering from pressures on cost. I mean, every company is trying to reduce their cost, make sure that their customer service organizations are as lean as possible. And this technology now gives them the opportunity to scale without having to, blow their cost, and give them access to this, almost unlimited agentic workforce.
So here's something else that's really interesting, right? When we, and I want you to make an analogy to this after I finish saying this, right? But when we introduced automated trading, I and the team that I was on essentially kept doing the same jobs, right? But when the next team was hired that replaced us, as we either aged out or became management or whatever it was, the jobs themselves actually got completely redesigned because it wasn't necessary to do the exact same job structure. And organizationally, actually, it changed as well, where we hired different kinds of people, structured differently, and stuff like that. Do you see the same thing happening here? Do you think job design inside of big enterprises, as the next generation comes in, has to change or will change? And same thing with the organizational structures as agentic AI not takes over, but becomes more embedded, as you said.
Absolutely, it will. I mean, what we say is AI and agentic AI will change the jobs that we do. Humans will still do work. We'll still have jobs to do. We'll still be very valuable within organizations. But the actual work that we do will change. And this has happened through many technology innovations of our time. We used to have typewriterists and data entry people. We don't have them anymore. We used to have a growing business of people who would, do the cobbling, the horseshoes, right? It's very small business now compared to where it used to be. But instead, what we've got engineers and automotive engineers and mechanics, because they've evolved from putting shoes on horses to maintaining and building motor cars. And we've moved from having people who, bookkeeping and general ledger and writing on a piece of paper to people who operate computers and manage data and all of that. So every technology revolution that's happened in our time, whether it's, the motor car, electricity, computerization, whatever it may be, has significantly changed the jobs that we're doing. But it hasn't caused this massive, doomsday scenario of, you and I in the technology space, right? We're doing a job that exists as a result of this technology that we wouldn't be doing 40, 50 years ago. So it's created whole new industries and different jobs to be done by humans.
Yeah, I would say this, and I say this very clearly. I am not of the mind that technology replaces humans and causes mass starvation, all this. I don't believe this at all. And the reason why is because I've seen, like you said, so many new technologies come in with some fear attached to them, and none of the fear mongering ever came out. Never. Right? I mean, if you think about, as you said, just going back 100 and something years to electricity or automobiles, yes. It's the same thing. It's the same thing. We don't have to litigate this at all, because I completely agree with you. How does it change like management responsibility? I haven't spent a lot of time thinking about this, but I'm sure you have, in the sense that if I'm now manager of a group of people and they're like 5 people, but they're working with, let's say, 1,000 AI agents or even more, how do I manage that? And like, how does it change my responsibility about what's going on? Because I can't ask the agents what they're doing, kind of thing. Like, how do I manage that? How does it change?
Well, our co-founder and chairman, Mark Benioff's, said he believes he'll be the last generation of CEOs to manage a purely human workforce, which is a big statement. The last sort of CEO that manages a workforce of pure humans. The new generation of CEOs coming in will have to get used to managing a combination of humans and agents working together. And managers will have that in their team as well. They will have physical workers, human beings, and they will have agents that they need to manage. And we want to make sure that when we develop these, and I mentioned the observability and the dashboarding, that in the same way that you wouldn't just go and create 100 employees and bring them into the organization and let them run riot. You would do the same with agents. They have to be accountable. They have to be reportable. Humans will have to monitor these agents. They will have to look at them. I mentioned earlier some of those product features, and I'm sure they will grow, that we're developing in terms of giving people the visibility on what is your agent doing. You have the ability within Salesforce to jump in and listen to a call. We recently announced Agentforce Voice, so moving into that voice channel, so you can listen into a call in the same way that you could do with a contact center agent, or you could watch the transcript and the messaging coming in live. You could take over a call if you believed it, you needed to. You can see the metrics on what's working, which agents are working effectively. You can look at customer sentiment. So we will have to get used to managing these agents in the same way that we manage humans, monitoring them, improving them, stepping in, tracking them. There's a lot of similarities between the way we're going to manage human resources and the way we need to manage agentic. And in many cases, the same thing applies. You've got to give them the right knowledge. You've got to monitor them. You've got to improve them. You've got to, coach them, change them, and really look at the return that they're giving, and the use cases that they're tackling.
So I'll let you go after this, right? Because it's been a great conversation. The last thing I want to end on is just based on all your experience, and particularly coming out of the Dreamforce that you guys did, I think you said a month ago or so. What kind of advice would you give to people who are still a little trepidatious about, is this really going to work for me? What kind of advice would you give them, and to make them feel more comfortable about doing this before they start implementing this stuff?
I mean, I think that there needs to be a bias for action. I mean, any company that doesn't have a agentic roadmap and agentic action needs to look carefully and readdress that, because as I said at the beginning of this chat, this is going to be a complete revolution, and you really don't want to be left behind. You don't want to be on the back foot. So, many companies have a wait and see, or we're not the first adopter. It's time now to really start putting in an AI and agentic enterprise roadmap within your organization, however big or small that is. And secondly, I would say have a bias for action and to start doing something. And I mentioned a number of simple use cases. Maxicare is a great example. They haven't gone and bought the ocean. They haven't done all of their use cases or everything that they could possibly do. They've taken one single use case, which has caused a customer pain point, and they've addressed that and they've implemented it. It's been successful, and hopefully they will then grow and add more to that. But they've started in bite size. They've gone and implemented something with Salesforce and our Agentforce platform that's easy to do, and the speed that you can do it is there. And then they've gone and iterated and improved and added on top of that and built more and more use cases. So advice would be, need to start now. If you're not starting now, start now.
It's too late.
Secondly, look at those low-hanging fruit and simple use cases and basically get going in terms of trying them out and seeing the value that they deliver, and then incrementally add on and improve from there.
Perfect. Gavin, you're so good at this. Thank you for coming back and doing this again. I hope you'll come back and join us when you have more stuff to tell us. I really appreciate your time today.
Always a pleasure, and really good to see you. Thank you so much for having me on the show.